This is The Final Word, T20 World Cup Daily, Day 9. Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins on the ninth day of the competition, brought to you by CBUS Super, making your hard work pay off. Today, South Africa took on Zimbabwe and the Netherlands played Bangladesh. We might start with a second game first, the South Africa-Zimbabwe one, because I think there'll be a little bit of talking point action coming out of this, Adam. I think there'll be a few discussions, some earnest debates and so forth about the intricacies of the laws of the game. Why don't you tell us about what happened in 30 seconds or less?
Yeah, it wasn't a very long game. Some late night shopping there at Bellerive Oval after a long delay. We thought it would be washed out. They got on for what was meant to be a 9-over game. Zimbabwe winning the toss and batting. They got 79 for 4 in their 9 overs after losing 4 quick wickets at the top. Due to Wesley Matavere making 35 not out. In reply, South Africa hit 40 runs in their power play of 2 overs. There was a rain delay. They came back. Quinton de Kock, 47 not out from 18 balls. They were 51 without loss after 3 overs, and that's when the covers came on for the last time and the game was complete. However, there is more to it than that. No results.
Yes, an abandonment in the end with South Africa within touching distance of the target and feeling probably fairly annoyed. South Africa rain World Cups, 1992, 2003, 2015. All in 50-over World Cups. I'm not sure if they've had a rain problem in a T20 World Cup before, not one that springs to mind, but another one here where the South Africans will feel pretty hard done by. They were obviously going to win the game, and they just didn't get the 5 overs required that lets you make a Duckworth-Lewis calculation, and they might have actually got the runs within 5 overs. They only faced 3 overs in their innings, and such was the ferocity of Quinton de Kock's attack that they were carting the ball absolutely everywhere, or he was. So they might have even chased it within the 5 overs, but the umpires did their best to stay out there for a long time. The rain got heavier and heavier, and eventually they had no choice but to come off.
Yeah, I think they did. I heard on the television broadcast saying had they got back on, Mazrashad, our friend from television, had calculated and passed over to Sean Pollock that the DLS target would have been 46 after 5 overs. I think that's what he said. And they were already on 51 after 3. So with that in mind, we've seen this happen in the Vitality Blast a couple of times in England in recent seasons, where games are ending for the chasing side, where the rain comes inside 5 overs of the chase, but they're ahead of the 5-over mark on DLS. Now, it does pose an interesting question because, sure, they haven't got the 5 overs in, but they're already beyond the point they need to be for a game to be constituted. I don't know. I sort of feel like on that basis, the chasing side can feel a stiff to hard done by because, you know, I appreciate that the game hasn't got to that juncture yet, and thus it's I guess a procedural fairness thing with the side that's fielding at that point. But if you've made it to where you need to be at over 5 by the end of over 3, then the rain comes and you're expecting it to be a 9-over game, then isn't that probably okay, or am I missing something here?
Well, I think, and I'm sure a lot of people will be taking up that particular line of argument after this game and saying that the team that's obviously storming ahead should be there. The thing is that the DLS target changes if a wicket falls. And so if you've only faced 3 overs, the bowling side still has 2 overs to bowl. There's no way of knowing whether that bowling team is going to take a hat-trick with the first 3 balls of the next over.
True.
You know, even if a wicket falls, the runs required goes up. So, you know, and perhaps if 1 wicket fell, then South Africa would still have been ahead of the target. If 2 had fallen, would they have been? I'm not sure if it were 3 or 4. So if you've still got 12 balls to bowl, you don't know how many of those deliveries might be wicket-taking deliveries and how many might concede runs.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
There's still an opportunity, the point is, for the bowling team to get into the winning position and be the one ahead of the DLS and then say, you know, that they were hard done by because 4.4 overs had been bowled and the rain had come in and they'd taken wickets in those intervening 10 deliveries and they were the ones who would have been in the winning position at the 5-over mark.
I think the only thing I'd add to that is that if we'd gone beyond 5 overs, that wouldn't be a factor. So that is to say, if it were a 30-over game where the rain comes at over 27 and they're past the 30-over mark at 27, I think they would win. Of course, they'd already have reached their target, and that'd be it. They'd be pulling the stumps out of the ground because they wouldn't be worrying about the rain coming down. It'd just be game over, right? So, yeah, I think that the only reason this becomes a thing is because we say that 5 overs constitutes a game. So, again, much as it was last night with the India-Pakistan finish, and we speak a little bit about that on Storytime that comes out tomorrow in your feeds, sometimes big tournaments generate unusual, unlikely scenarios that do get an extra look by the the big dogs, and it might be the case that this does as well, that it's on the world stage, not a T20 Blast game, and thus it might provide a rethink. What's frustrating is that Quinton de Kock, from a pure batting perspective, I mean, he did everything right. He came out and hit 3 fours, a 6, another 4 in that first over. Like I say, 40 from 2. Even the way that he farmed the strike, he faced all bar 2 deliveries, having opened with Temba Bavuma. So, he has every right to feel pretty hard done by on that basis, and they split the difference, and Zimbabwe get out of jail. They did make it to 79 though, which is commendable given where they were, Jeff, after I guess it was the 3rd over when they'd lost their 4th wicket. There was a lazy run out in there, direct hit, an excellent catch from de Kock as well. I think that was Raza at the top edge when he tried to hook, and a couple of wickets there, one to Parnell at the start, a couple to Ngidi, then the run out. Then that pair of Wesley Matavere, who made 35 not out from 18 balls, and Milton Shumba, who made 19 not out from 19 balls. They put on 60 in 26 balls, which is kind of the perfect way to finish a white ball inning.
Yep.
So at least Zimbabwe, it's not as though they were, they get this no result point and they didn't put in some work. I mean, they did a good job to get where they did when batting first after all the carnage at the start.
Yeah, they certainly recovered well. They played really badly the first 3 overs. They were basically just swinging themselves off their feet, trying to, everybody was trying to smear everything into the stands, and it took a batting pair to get together at least for 5 minutes and take a breath and decide how to go after the bowling with a little bit more, clearer decision making, I suppose. They looked freaked out by the actual situation of the game rather than by the bowling. It was, oh God, we've got a 9 over game. We must attack every single ball with unparalleled ferocity and raze your cities to the ground. And so Sikandar Raza getting out for a duck hooking was illustrative of that. Their most destructive hitter not being able to land a blow. So I thought it was really important because Milton Shumba's played a couple of good little supporting hands we've seen during the group stage, and Wesley Matavere has had a couple of poor games as well, but is a big talent for the future. So those two putting it together seemed significant. And then Quinton de Kock, 9 boundaries in his first 12 balls, or 9 balls that went to the rope or over it. There was 1 6 in there. Just an extraordinary array of hitting. I suppose if you wanted to be critical, you could say the other 3 balls, if he'd hit them for 6, then they would have won the game, because he would have had time to get all of the runs before the rain came through. But he did everything he could. He was racing the clock, the Quinton de Kock, if you will, by the end, and there was just nothing more he could have done. He scored so quickly and very nearly pulled it out of the fire.
And lastly, Jeff, before we move off the non-result game, the second game this evening in Tasmania, a credit to the umpires, I reckon. Like, they gave the game every opportunity to get on, to play to the extent they could, and then they pulled the players off when it was clearly unsafe. Now, you can make the case that it was unsafe before then. We saw Richard Ngara go down. We saw a couple of other players slipping and sliding. We saw some close-ups of the ball in the first innings, actually, and it looks impossible to bowl with. But I suppose in a situation like that as an umpire, you know that there is greater criticism coming your way if you prematurely pull the players off, given how close South Africa were to the finish target. They gave them every chance. It really took until the captain, Irvine, went up to the umpires. I think the word on the commentary, or the Nasser Hussain said he could lip sync what Irvine was saying was, come on, it's a World Cup here. So it's not, it's not a pub game. So I think that they waited and waited, and they had to pull them off when they did. And it proved to be the right call, because the heavens opened, as it had a couple of times earlier in the afternoon.
I think they did give it every opportunity. It was absolutely pissing down by the time they had to come off. It had been raining heavily for 10 minutes by that point. I mean, you've got a spinner with the ball. How are they supposed to grip the ball and come in and bowl at that stage? And Sean Williams had every right to protest at that point. And Zimbabwe hadn't complained up until that stage. So, yeah, look, it's hard done for the South Africans, but I'd reiterate that point that the 5 over mark, the reason you have a minimum is that it gives both the bowling side and the batting side some opportunity to have an impact on the game. You can have a batting side that gets off to a flyer and score runs. You have no idea whether the bowling side might take wickets in overs 4 and 5 and peg things back and change the equation. So there's always that opportunity for both sides. Just because one side's on top doesn't mean they're going to win the game, and that's what DLS is all about, working out the probabilities and awarding results to the team that's more likely to win, but you need a big enough sample size to be able to make that judgment.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Let's go back to the first game of the day. Before doing so, of course, Nasser Hussain was lip-reading, not lip-syncing, per milli vanilli. That would be awkward if that were the case. Jeff, give us a 30-second summary of the first Super 12s game of the day between Bangladesh and the Netherlands.
Well, Bangladesh didn't look great for a while. Good power play, 1 for 47, but lost a wicket either side of the end of the power play, and then the collapse came on against the Dutch. 5 for 33. They were a 76 for 5 at one point. There was a consolidation stand that got them up to 120, and then another couple of wickets in quick succession, a little collapse of 3 for 14. They were in a bunch of strife at various times, but Afif Hussain bashed 38 runs in quick time, and Mossadegh hit a couple of big blows at the end, got them to 144, and their bowling was just too good. Taskin Ahmed on a hat-trick right away, wickets with the first 2 balls, then a couple of run-outs, and look, despite Ackerman actually making some runs for the first time in this World Cup, it was nowhere near enough. It looked closer than it was, 9-run margin in the end, but it was due to a lot of wides and some tail-end pogoing at the end when the result was pretty much beyond doubt.
Yeah, I share that view. 9-run margin probably flatters Netherlands, the same way that it did in their final group game when they lost by like a dozen runs or thereabouts to Sri Lanka, but they were soundly beaten until some late hitting, as it was here. It was an odd game though, wasn't it? It kind of went in shifts and spurts. So as you say, Bangladesh get off to the flyer, then they lose a clump of wickets, then they consolidate quite effectively, then they lose a bunch more, and then they rely on Mossadegh Hussain to hit them to 144. And the same kind of happened with the Netherlands. You say, 2 wickets in 2 balls, then 2 run-outs in 1 over. Inside the power play, they're gone, 4 for 15 or something like that. Then they had that consolidation phase themselves, which is led by Colin Ackerman, who made his first half century for the Netherlands, having only qualified a couple of years ago. And, Colin Ackerman wasn't playing throughout the course of 2022. He was staying true to his commitments, captaining Leicestershire, but made himself available for this tournament and made a contribution. I think he finished with 62 or something like that. So happy for him, but yeah, he didn't have the kind of support he required to go all the way to the finish line. And some hitting from Van Meekeren at the end, which made it look a bit better than it was. But yeah, all told, Bangladesh far from their best, and they've got issues with their death bowling, and they probably would want to put it this way: it's their first win in this stage of the tournament ever. They have been a poor T20 side, Bangladesh, more often than not. So at least they've got a win under their belt, and they've won scrappy tonight, and that's not for nothing.
I mean, Bangladesh have had a pretty poor lead-up to this tournament as well. They've been in all sorts of dicey form trying to get a team together to contest this tournament. I don't think this game tells us a lot. I mean, they looked a pretty ordinary side during the middle of that batting innings, but that is what the Dutch can do. That's their strength, is the ability to put the squeeze on teams sometimes with the ball, to field well and to bowl tidily, and to make teams make mistakes and be able to cause those mistakes to double up and triple up. So that is what happened with Bangladesh. But there's always this vulnerability with the Dutch where you think it only takes a few good overs for teams to pile things up, and so a score that could have been around 120 ended up being 140 plus, and then that's a different mindset for them. And then the way it started, their weakness is generally having to chase runs, that kind of pressure that good bowling sides can put on. And Taskin Ahmed comes in ripping first ball, like quick, takes the edge, carries to a deep set slip, low down catch, and then the next one caught behind. And Colin Ackerman's been making a few first ball ducks lately, and so he's coming out on the hat-trick ball. I mean, if you were facing, if you had a top order player that you had to bowl to, you'd probably fancy Colin Ackerman, but he managed to survive that ball and eventually go on to play a good hand. But he took a long time to get going and to start to look more convincing out there.
Yeah, not only survive it, but he played a lovely clip through mid-wicket off middle stump too. It wasn't a bad hat-trick delivery from Taskin Ahmed, who picked up Vikram Singh and Baz Delita, who's the emerging star of Dutch cricket, in consecutive deliveries, which meant that Bangladesh were always going to be well on their way. And just on Taskin Ahmed, there's been a lot of hype around him over about, I would say, 6 or 7 years now. Mustafiza gets the headlines, but Taskin Ahmed's quicker than him. And he prides himself on being the fastest bowler in Bangladesh. I interviewed him with Mohammad Izam in his house, actually, when I was in Bangladesh, all the way back in 2017. So it's a long time ago, 5 years ago. But he's one of these bowlers who isn't too worried about landing the ball in a shoebox, 4 or 5 times and over. He just wants to bowl quickly. And when he gets it right, he has the rhythm, has the strength in the upper body and all the rest of it. So I'm thrilled to see him have a great start to the World Cup. 2 at the start and 2 at the end. And the other bit about Bangladesh that always kind of befuddles me is Mossadegh Hussain, Jeff. And I know I've whinged about this before, but I don't think his off-spin's particularly crash shot, yet he's batting at number 8. He strikes me as a guy that, like, surely you want a guy who can hit the ball as well as him to face as many deliveries as possible. Hiding down at number 8 is a bad allocation of resources, and hopefully the fact that he finished with 22 not out from 12 balls, something like that, provides pause for the powers that be, and maybe he can go back further up the order where he should be. Because if you see him making runs, Lytton Dust missed out today, but he's had a really good 2022. We saw Shanto bat well, and Afif as well. So they've had a few players today make runs. It's just about getting the right combination together. And look, they'll be. They'll be, I suppose, the 5 seed in that group, or the 4 or 5 seed in that group, if you're being realistic about who they're going to cop in the next couple of days. But, if they can take out one of the big dogs, they can have an influence in this tournament, however unlikely it is that they'll advance to the Final Four.
Well, Afif was saying he got lucky as well. He was dropped at deep mid-wicket by Tim Pringle, who himself benefited from a drop catch when Netherlands beat the UAE in the previous stage. So that was key as well. Had Pringle taken that catch, then that would have piled a lot more pressure on Bangladesh at that point, and Afif was saying went on to hit a few big blows and make some quick runs that ended up being decisive in the end. So you have one fielding lapse, and that can be the thing that really stings, I suppose. And Ackerman and Edwards just a bit too slow in their rebuilding phase, really. So they needed 53 off the last 24 balls, and that was really asking too much. Ackerman ends up out in the 17th over for 62, and then a bunch of wides. Although there was a point where they needed 18 from the last 3 deliveries where it was theoretically possible, but it wasn't likely to happen with the 10th wicket partnership in. Should we have a look at a Hall of Fame?
Just en route to that, just a few positives for the Dutch. So I think that Tim Pringle taking a wicket early in his spell, his first ball actually to get rid of Shanto. I just think that across the tournament, the advantage of them making the Super 12 is that Tim Pringle's going to play all of this world-class cricket. I think he's going to be a star, that bloke. So one to watch there. Great catch from Baz Delita. Didn't contribute with the bat, but did take a great catch to get rid of Shakib Al Hassan. And I had one other positive there. What was it? I can't remember anymore. There were a few positives. Let me just say that. Van Meekeren hitting the stumps again at 145 clicks. So, and he made runs. So, there's stuff there. I'd love to see them pinch a game in this Super 12 stage, and that would be just to shake up the group, something we'd all celebrate. And yes, now we can move on to the Hall of Fame, Jeff.
Very good. The Final Word Hall of Fame is where we pick our most final word moment of the day. It's brought to you by CBUS, which is one of Australia's largest industry super funds, established in 1984, created by workers for workers. We've worked with them before some time ago. We're very glad to have them back for the T20 World Cup.
Yeah, one of the best performing super funds in Australia, an average return of 8.88% over the last 38 years, Jeff. I don't know an awful lot about the financial markets, but that sounds like a pretty bloody good average return.
It's good numerology too. I mean,
it is.
In certain facets of Chinese culture, the number 8 is considered very lucky. So 3 8s in a row, bonanza.
They manage $74 billion of funds for their members across Australia. So we spent the first couple of days just reminding people of who CBUS are and where they fit in. As you say, they've been great supporters of us. So visit cbussuper.com.au. Past performance is not a reliable indicator of future performance. But and also, Jeff, I've been doing some work on the little jingle that we had when CBUS were with us before. So watch this space for tomorrow. If you're a long-term watcher and listener to the show, I suspect you'll be pleased by what comes on day 10 of the Final Word Daily.
Hi ho, hi ho. The Hall of Fame. Look, I am rife. I'm replete with possibilities. I thought Shanto needs a nod for his run out. The fact that he had to chase a ball down to the boundary, put in a big slide to save 4, and then has the wit and the presence of mind to spring up, dart back in, and fire in a throw that affects the run out while the Dutch batters are coming back for a third. I mean, that was a brilliant piece of work just to start with.
Yes, good first nomination there to get us underway in the Hall of Fame. I'm going to pop Quinton de Kock in there, not for his batting, but not for his wicket keeping either. That fabulous catch off Sikandar Raza, but the 5 penalty runs. Now, 2 parts to this. One is that how it happened, right? So it looks like he threw his glove on the turf. The throw came in from the outfield, hits the glove, and therefore it's 5 penalty runs. But how about seemingly nobody at Bellerive Oval, apart from the umpires, knowing that you get an extra delivery for that? I must admit, I don't think I knew that. The television broadcast was about to go to an ad, and in the end, that 7th delivery did net them a wicket. South Africa in that, was it the last over? I think it was the last over.
But the last ball of the match.
So you get an extra delivery, a re-bowled ball when after conceding 5 penalty runs. I did not know that, but we all know it now.
Yes. Because the ball is not allowed to touch a piece of equipment that is not attached to a player. So, yeah, de Kock drops the glove and then drops the ball onto the glove, and away we go. Let's see. What have we got? I enjoyed Richard Ngarava walking off when the rain was falling with a towel over his head just to cover up his precious hair so that it didn't get messed up by the rain.
I like the way that he laid on the turf when, I'm not sure if he really hurt himself seriously when slipping over, but he was milking every second out of that, and fair play to him. I mean, if I were him, I would have insisted on the golf cart to take him off to kill yet more time. In a situation like that, you've got to do whatever you can to let rain intervene. So.
Well, I hope his ankle's okay. It's one of those. It's one of those horrible positions for the umpires, though, who, as you alluded to earlier, probably deserve a Hall of Fame nomination for keeping the game on. But that's what they're worried about, is players slipping. And I think it was a genuine slip. You know, he stepped off the cut strip and his foot went out from under him, and there was a nasty twist to the ankles. So. He may be in some strife, and they need him. I enjoyed a little bit of wisdom from Pommy and Bangua when the Zimbabwe batters were swinging as hard as they could and not connecting. He said, "You don't need to hit it for 7." And I thought, that's applicable to life more broadly sometimes. You don't need to hit it for 7. Just hit it for 6.
And maybe on that basis, Jeff, we should pull the pin because it's nearly midnight. I've got an early flight back to Melbourne where I'll be joining you. So let's not hit this for 7. We've already gone plenty tonight. On a night where only 1.5 games were played.
I have to throw in Tuscan Ahmed very nearly getting the 5 for the Yorker tailing in to middle stump against the number 11 with his last ball of the match and not quite being able to polish things off. That was I was hoping for a different moment there, just for Tuscan Ahmed's sake, to get the 5. And also the Bangladesh vest fielder, one of the sub runners, just coming onto the field to field a 4 and throw it back before it had reached the rope. Like, it's not club cricket. Get off the field. You're not playing. You can't just go, "Oh, that's 4. I'll decide that's 4 before it reaches the rope," and intervene. Absurd stuff, but it was funny.
We'll decide who comes here and on what terms they come. Jeff, that's it. That has been the Final Word Daily. If you like what we do, patreon.com/the Final Word. We'll be making one of these every single day of this 2022 T20 World Cup. Thank you to CBUS Super, making sure your money is working. I got this wrong the other night too. It's making sure your money is working as hard as you are. There you go. That's better. CBUS Super, making hard work pay off. Visit cbussuper.com.au. It's so good to have them back with us through this tournament. And I'll be back with you tomorrow, Jeff. We've got a nice big interview lined up for the weekly show. And after that, we'll settle in to watch some cricket. And we might maybe just wander down to the Melbourne Cricket Ground and film the podcast down there, even though there is no cricket in Melbourne tomorrow. How's that sound?
Sounds great. I'll see you tomorrow.
Ta-da.